Howdy, friends. I got an odd story that you all know from the Gospel of Matthew, but I just want to encourage you to do something. So I'm going to read it and then I'll explain it. So this comes from the 26th chapter. It says, "Now when Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment. She poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, 'Why this waste? This ointment could have been sold for a large sum and the money given to the poor.' But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, 'Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service to me. For you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the whole wide world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her.'" So without getting into the whole thing of people like Judas saying don't waste the money because there's money and greed and stuff like that, without talking about the idea of this anointing of Jesus' body before his death and crucifixion, this thing, it's a reminder to use the good china, as an author I liked says. There's a guy named Rob Bell. Some of you have done a Bible study with me on him. I read a lot of his books. He grew up in Michigan, so we have a lot of the similar foundational worldviews, if you will, from some things in Michigan. And one of the pieces, he had some traumatic brain injury and didn't remember his family, didn't remember anything. And when he came to and everything came back to him and his life went back to as normal as you ever get after a traumatic injury, he had this realization that passages like this, among others, is also a call from Jesus to, when you have the good stuff, to not waste it, to use the good china. I grew up in a house where Sunday nights we had china. My parents got it for their wedding almost 50 years ago now, and every single Sunday night the good china came out. Could not go in the dishwasher, so everything had to be hand washed when we had a dishwasher, which was not my whole time growing up, but here and there we did. So the good china would come out, you would sit here and you do all your stuff, the beautiful white pattern and everything, and you do it just once a week. And then every so often for special occasions, birthdays, which was always weird for me, I'd get pizza and we'd have pizza on china, whatever. For holidays, so for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for any of those big events, we would do the good china. And otherwise it just sat in a thing, just sitting in a cabinet, doing nothing. My mom and I talked about this when I was getting married, and she said, "Well, make sure you pick out a good china pattern." And I'm like, "We're not going to use it. Like, why would I spend the money?" Well, it's nice to have those special things. And I read this passage then from this book. It's called How to Be There, or How to Be Here. And it's this idea, why, if you've got something good and special, do you save it? What are you waiting for? So some of you will know this about me, probably most of you. I like beer. There's this thing in the beer world, much like the wine world, where you have a cellar, which means you save special bottles for special occasions. My dear wife and I had a conversation when we moved. Some of you helped move my cellar from our Sheboygan house to our Oostburg house. And there's probably 500 bottles I have stored, which sounds like hoarding, and you're probably right, it's probably hoarding. And my whole thing has always been, I'm going to save these bottles for something special. Well, it turns out with wine, with beer, with anything, if you wait too long, it won't be good anymore, right? There's a certain level that says you have to use it before a certain date, otherwise it's bad. And some of these fancy beers are $20, $30, $40 a bottle, and if you wait too long, then they start to taste like soy sauce. It's disgusting. Just, you don't need to try it to know. And it came to me long before this pandemic, but especially during this pandemic. What am I waiting for to use the good china, to open up the cellar and have that beautiful bottle of beer? What am I waiting for to celebrate the good things in life? What am I waiting for? So I'm going to encourage you this weekend, going forward, whenever it is, if you've got something special that you only pull out on certain occasions, whatever it happens to be, just use it. What are you waiting for? Much like this woman who anoints Jesus, use the good stuff. Celebrate the goodness of life, and don't worry so much about everything else. So be present, celebrate the goodness in all you do, and I will talk to you all soon.